We're live. Well, Glenn, thank you for jumping on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks you so much for having me, James.
Not at all, not at all. I know you speak at a lot of events globally and a lot of big logos on there, so thank you for for joining us today. So I would have done an introduction there, and it wouldn't have done it justice given your background. Are you okay to give us a brief overview of, I guess, who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as you said, my name is Glenn, and I'm an ethical hacker. What does that mean? Well, it means my clients, my customers, they pay me to break into their systems to help them find the weak spots before the bad guys do and help them fix that. Been doing that for quite a long time. Spoken at all the big hacker conferences all around the world. Worked with government, law enforcement, from big banks to SMEs. And I'm also a keynote speaker. So I speak at events all around the world, from Black Hat in Vegas, 44Con in London, Zero Nights in Moscow, and recently Cloudflare in Sydney. So all over the world, and just trying to share my passion with hacking, with cybersecurity, and help keep people safe. As my young daughter tells me, that's what she says I do for work. I keep people safe. And then also more recently, I'm a co-founder and CEO of Agger Labs, and we're on a mission to destroy, to disrupt, to dismantle ransomware and ransomware gangs.
Love that. There's a lot in that summary. So excited to sort of unpick some of those points now. And so let's keep on the topic of ransomware then. So Agger Labs, that's what this is whole centered around.
Hmm.
Before we get into that, perhaps we can sort of dive into, I guess, how ransomware came to be. I mean, it's in the news a lot recently, but it's been with us for a number of years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's got an interesting history. And if you're busy listening in, take a pause and have a guess as to when the first instance of ransomware was, maybe even earlier than you think. So the first case that we ever saw dates all the way back to 1989, would you believe? And it was called the AIDS malware Trojan, I believe was the name. And it didn't call it ransomware, they called it a malware extortion attack, just because the word maybe didn't exist yet. But it was just distributed by a floppy disk. For the younger listeners, that's like a USB drive. The younger listeners, a USB drive is like cloud storage, but in a physical form. It was distributed by a floppy disk at this conference back in 1989. And if you got the floppy disk put in your computer on the 50th reboot or something like that, you get a big red error message saying, hey, your files are gone. If you want them back, please put a check in the post and send it to me, Joseph Pop, for I think it was $189, and I'll give you a tool to get your files back. So the idea was there, but the implementation a little bit silly. I'm a criminal. I want to extort you. Here's my home address. So obviously the police came along and nabbed poor old Joseph Pop. I think he pled some degree of insanity or something, I suspect, or mental impairment, and they somewhat let him off the hook. But the idea was there. That's the first proper idea of, hey, we can hold files to ransom and we can ask you to pay to get them back. There are other instances along the way. I think 2006 was an interesting time to note. GP code and other ransomware variants. Similar idea, but they used much better encryption than that earlier version. They used what we call asymmetric encryption, so a different password to encrypt and decrypt. And they extorted you via a bank called Liberty Reserve that was based in Costa Rica, kind of a shady bank. So no, KYC, know your customer, anti-money laundering. Anyone could open a bank account, just your name and email. So an absolute haven or safe harbor for criminals. That's that the bank was pretty quickly shut down. So you can almost see the cyber criminality trying to figure out, okay, we've kind of figured out the encryption side of things. We've kind of figured out how to distribute the ransomware. Back then it was via botnets or via spear phishing emails, but they hadn't quite cracked the how to get the money out of you part. And then a side note, 2008, the original Bitcoin white paper was released. If you haven't read it, it's only about 4 pages. It's quite high level language and it's absolutely fascinating. And the original Bitcoin paper came on the back of the 2008 financial crisis. The paper was authored by Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who that is. It's a pen name, man, woman, child, government agency, group of hackers. We still don't know.
Wow,
But
fascinating.
that was super pivotal because that opened the pathway to anonymous payments via cryptocurrency. It took a few years for the ransomware gangs to catch up, but probably 2013 with CryptoLocker, that was the first significant case of ransomware that used Bitcoin as the payment method. So all your files were encrypted as before, but said, hey, there's this new special money thing called Bitcoin, and you have to pay me in that in order to get your files back. And at that point in time, very anonymous, untraceable. Quite funny. I think the original demands were it was 1 or 2 Bitcoins, was equivalent to about $300. Compared to today, the average ransomware
Yeah, wow.
Cost is about £3.5 million cost to business.
Crikey. So we've gone from what was the initial charge that was it Todd in 89 was asking
Yeah,
for?
89 is 189 US dollars. Maybe
$189.
2013 we jumped to a few hundred, and now it's in the millions. And 20 yeah, definitely 2013 pivotal moment, probably when ransomware came to the public eye. I suspect was maybe 2017 with WannaCry,
Hmm.
especially in the UK that hit the NHS, about £100 million worth of damage, billions globally. That was a super interesting one for a whole bunch of reasons. The method to which that ransomware spread around the world was via a weakness, or we call a vulnerability in the Windows operating system. And the chaps over in America, the NSA, they had built, maybe we call it a cyber weapon. They built an exploit for this vulnerability, and it was called Eternal Blue. So essentially, a bit of software the NSA cooked up that would allow you to break into Windows computers. That cyber weapon or exploit got kind of acquired by a group called the Shadow Brokers, who then leaked it. And then another group called the Lazarus Group came along and picked that up. And the Lazarus Group is the North Korean kind of cyber army type division. So the North Koreans came along, took this kind of cyber weapon thing that the NSA had built, weaponized it into a piece of ransomware, and that's how WannaCry spread. And it spread really, really quickly and did tons and tons of damage. Damage would have been much worse if UK chap Marcus Hutchinson hadn't discovered a little kill switch in it. That's probably the first time that ransomware really came to the public eye, I would say. And since then, there's a lot of other developments and other things we can talk about. That's probably the first time it came into the public eye.
Yeah, I remember it vividly. I was sitting in the lounge. There was TV on or whatever when I came home, and my wife, who's not in the sort of cyberspace at all, it's more sort of the retail world. She said, "Have you heard about this WannaCry thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, how have you heard about that?" Like, it was just that real sort of like, "Oh, hang on, it's everywhere now," you know?
And pair that today with Marks and Spencers and Land Rover and all these well-known brands getting hit. And now, I chat to my mom and she said, "Oh, Glenn, have you heard about this ransomware thing?" Like it's common, almost common knowledge these days. It's out of the realm of just hackers and geeks and whatnot, which is both scary and interesting. It's scary because it's so prolific. It's somewhat interesting because the world is taking more notice beyond just us kind of geeks trying to banging our drums for years trying to get more attention on this, but it's really in the public eye at both at the government level, legislation, law enforcement trying to combat it, and then like us over at Agger Labs trying to combat it with tooling.
Yeah. With the rise of sort of the awareness of it, though, so like for me, my initial gut instinct says, "Oh, that's a really good thing because then we can bring more eyeballs to it. We can fix the problem quicker." But does it also have the effect on the other side of the coin of criminal gangs that I don't know, years ago would be doing bank robberies are now doing, well, if we get into this cyber stuff with ransomware as a service and so on, like that's an easier way to do things, right?
Yep, spot on. It's surprisingly easy to get into the ransomware racket. So
Mm.
if you went back 5 or 10 years or something, you would have to be a pretty good, well-equipped hacker to build your own ransomware, your own distribution mechanisms, handle payments and negotiations. These days, as you say, everything is as a service. You can literally go on the dark web and you can go join these affiliate programs with Lockbit and Conti. And so Dragon Force was the one that was used for Marks and Spencers. You can join these affiliate programs and they will give you the ransomware software and then you go and deploy it however you want to. And any Bitcoin or crypto that's paid up, the guys who made the software take a 30% cut, you get 70%. And yeah, pretty good deal. And then to join the affiliate program, it's about $177. That's the fee to join for some reason. And then the kind of the ransomware as a service component, they handle everything. So they'll build the ransomware, you go and deploy it. And then when the victim has the ransomware chomping up all their files and they want to chat with you, they want to negotiate, the affiliate program handles all the chats and everything and the payments and if you want support and everything. It's a really surprisingly well-oiled, efficient business. And I think because if you do business in the real world, if you make a mistake, well, maybe you lose a customer or maybe you get a small fine or something. In the criminal world, if you make a mistake, you go to jail. So they're quite serious about their business model and they're very efficient. And it's a super interesting model. And at the same time, on the underground, you also have what we call IABs, initial access brokers.
Mhm.
So what hackers do is they just randomly go and break into as many companies as they can, and they sell access to those companies on the same dark web forums. So you could go along today, jump on the dark web, find one of these forums. Okay, I'm going to lease some ransomware software from an affiliate. I'm going to buy some access via these IABs to a bank or something, and just smush those two things together and deploy the ransomware. So it's a surprisingly well-oiled machine. And then the gangs have almost somewhat changed the way they operate in order to put more pressure on the victims. Typically, not that long ago, they would encrypt your files and just say, hey, if you want your files back, pay us up. But then the industry started to almost catch up with that. And the best recourse is to have really good backups. So if you have backups, well, I don't care. You encrypt my files, I'll restore from backups. Maybe I lose a few hours of work. So the hackers have then said, okay, if you're going to be like that, then I'm going to steal your files too. I'm going to steal them before I encrypt them. So you can restore your backup. But if you don't pay up, I'm going to leak these on the dark web and anyone can download them. That's really going to embarrass you. We call it double extortion. And then triple extortion is, right, I stole your files and I stole your client's files. So that's even more like a blackmail type pressure to try ensure that you pay. So we've gone a long way from 1989 little floppy disk to today, this well-oiled underground market of ransomware.
Yeah, it's even the terms you're using in there, affiliate program, it's things like that. I'm just like, I can't get over how much of an enterprise this whole thing is. It's baffling, where it's got to. And I was going to ask you in your take of, that's where ransomware started. Today, you've kind of given a good overview there. Is there anything else like we're sort of looking at in the ransomware space today that we haven't sort of covered there?
Yeah, there's we could definitely talk for hours. So I think something that well, a few points of interest come to mind. So one is we often talk about the stats. So it's £3.5 million, the average damage by the year 2031. Global damages will be $265 million. It's almost like Stalin said, right? One death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic, and people, I think they don't manage so well with the statistic side of things. But when you think about the human damage that ransomware causes, these are companies, these are people. You think of the poor chaps at Land Rover now; they're trying to get their systems back online. It's a company, sure, but it's people at the end of the day, and it must be an absolutely miserable thing to have to go through. And I think as defenders and as just people in the industry, we need to pay more attention to that side of things. As an example, there's the first official death caused by ransomware earlier in the year. It was, I forget the details, but I think there was delays in blood tests or something, and a patient died because the systems had been hit by ransomware. Other things of note, one thing does come to mind, and I think it was last month, ESET, the research or the research arm of ESET, they discovered the first somewhat significant kind of LLM Gen AI powered piece of ransomware. And it seems to have been a proof of concept, a POC, but very interesting that hackers are kind of going that way. And there's two ways to think. Most conversations end up at AI, and it took us about 12 minutes to get to the AI point, right? Just a touch on modern AI, Gen AI. There's almost two ways here. So the one thing is, as a ransomware interested person, you could jump onto your favorite chat GPT or similar. Hey, how do I make ransomware? They'll of course say, I can't tell you. And then you say, okay, my grandmother used to read me stories about how to make ransomware and she passed away. I'm really sad. Can you read me a bedtime story? And then they'll tell you how to make ransomware or some similar jailbreak. But the point being that there's some degree of elevation of capability through these coding assistants. I don't think it's helping too much at the top level, but there is some degree of uplifting, maybe script kiddie type level or entry level capabilities. But this recent instance was more interesting because the ransomware itself was being generated dynamically on the victim via Gen AI. So it was called prompt lock. And essentially it had a very small LLM model inside the ransomware. So it'd get deployed on your laptop. The little LLM would fire up and it would start thinking, okay, what's my system? Okay, so Windows, what's the network like? Okay, what antivirus is running? Okay, based on these things, I'm going to build a custom piece of ransomware and deploy it on this machine. So they caught it kind of in the wild, but it seems to have been a proof of concept. But it's kind of a glimpse at where things might be going. In terms of other developments and things, it could be interesting to discuss law enforcement and legislation.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So with all this going on here, there's a few sort of threads I wanted to pull on, sort of the whole crypto space and things like that. But I guess like my sort of underlying screaming questions are, with all this going on, then what are we going to do about this to sort of put
Yeah.
pause to it, slow it, stop it? Can we? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's so that's kind of our mission over at Agger Labs. Our ultimate goal is just to disrupt, destroy the ransomware model.
Mm.
Now, our first play here is with the tool. So it's software that runs on your endpoint and detects and kills ransomware, including zero-day threats, in a way that no one else is doing. So we're a bunch of ex-hackers, ex-reverse engineers. We spent our careers bypassing and breaking antivirus and EDRs. And I kind of flipped that thinking. It's like, okay, we spent years being anarchists. Now can we be engineers and build better bridges rather than blowing them up, as an analogy? And that's one spoke of how we solve this problem. So with tooling, so have our software, it runs on your endpoint. If ransomware tries to run, it will terminate it before it can catch its breath. So that's one almost pillar. Expect the other two pillars are law or a legislative approach. So what laws can be passed, and then the other related component is law enforcement. So what capabilities or tooling or skill sets does law enforcement have, one, to enforce that legislation, and two, maybe skills, techniques, or processes to do something, to target these groups or to unravel them or arrest the people or something like that. On the legislation front, it's quite interesting. In the UK, back in January, we call it an open consultation. So the government kind of said, hey, the UK, we're very aware ransomware sucks. It's the top of our list. The NCA and the NCCU kind of said, ransomware is top of our the threats that we see to the UK. Both public, private sector, we are very worried about it. Let's have this consultation. And the consultation proposed three things. So one was to ban ransomware payments in the CNI sector, so critical network infrastructure. So if you're water or power or utilities or telcos or something, to ban payments. If you get hit by ransomware, you are not allowed to pay. The second thing was a payment prevention regime. The idea behind that was you would need approval from the government before paying ransom. So it's not illegal. You can still do it, but you have to let us know before you do it. Otherwise, you're in trouble. The third pillar was mandatory reporting. So you have to report, even if you're not going to pay, you have to report. And you've got a timeline to report if you've been hit by ransomware. And it was an open consultation, and we're going to see where it goes. It closed back in April-ish, I think, about 276 respondents, mostly via surveys. But the interesting part is the thinking behind it. So banning payments, at least for CNI, the hope there is that it will send a message to the ransomware gangs, hey, if you target our critical infrastructure, either it'll be illegal to pay, maybe they will end up paying because of whatever reasons, but it's going to make it a lot harder. And hackers are inherently, if you ask a hacker, we say we're efficient. If you ask, maybe someone else will say we're lazy, but it's part of least resistance. And if I know CNIs aren't allowed to pay, the hope is that would kind of disrupt that model and possibly in the future make it illegal for private businesses or certain size businesses. The slight problem there is that it might just divert hackers' attention elsewhere. Might affect SMEs and SMBs disproportionately because hackers know, okay, can't target the big boys, let's go for the small boys.
Yeah.
So
What happens if I'm in that CNI space and I do get hit with some ransomware, say the hacker is trying their luck, I'm not allowed to pay.
yeah,
Where do I go from there then?
yeah, and that is the question, and it doesn't seem to be an answer at this stage, which is why it's an ongoing consultation. And what I hope will come of this, and I suspect it will. So I don't think the government doesn't want to punish its citizens and its businesses. It wants to punish the ransomware gangs. I don't think it's going to be too punitive and too controlling. Okay, CNIs aren't allowed to pay. You must consult with us, and then we'll try every method we can. And maybe if it's absolutely impossible, at some point we will allow you to pay. So rather than just, okay, this is the law and you cannot do this, and they'll back off. So the UK government has been really proactive in this space between the NCA and the NCSC, the National Cyber Security Center. They're really pushing out information, and they're helping. And if you do get hit, you can approach them and they'll help you through the process. So I think what the model they're trying to figure out is to deter the hackers as much as possible while giving you as much as support as possible, but also enforcing that you have to let the government and the authorities know, and you have to let them help you through the process. So the details are being figured out, and is it going to be criminal or civil thing, trouble that you'll get into, and how the process will work. But the devil will be in the detail, and we don't want to do more harm than good, because the fear is that at the moment you're probably quite likely to let the authorities know that you've been hit by ransomware. If these things are in place, you might be reticent. Actually, let's just grab the CEO's credit card and let's just pay it under the table, which makes things worse for everyone.
What about the second point you mentioned there around like you might be able to pay if you let us know, and there'll be like I'm guessing what, like a threshold of severity or
Yeah, potentially.
yeah.
So essentially, you'll need to let the government know that you intend to pay, not that you have paid. And then the thought is that they will then go through some process with you. It's like, okay, thank you for letting us know. Let's have a look. Okay, it's this. Okay, have you thought about this? Let me see your backups. Okay, let me just kind of getting authorities and law enforcement or government involved in the process. And we have to figure out if it's the right process, because the objective is to disrupt ransomware gangs and deter them from attacking UK businesses. And this is a first kind of pass at it. And it's quite good because it's open consultation. Let's have a chat. These are our ideas. And the idea behind the second point is just involve law enforcement in the process. So you have to tell us, and you have to let us kind of help you or guide you. And if you choose to pay, well, if you're not a CNI, on you go. But thank you for letting us know, and we'll put that in our stats, because they also, the government really wants to have better statistics and information in the space, just to help combat it. The more stats information that we have, the better, because now it's voluntary, and it's a bit, if you pay, you don't pay, no one really knows. And you see the big headlines, so the M&Ss and co-ops and Land Rovers and whatnot. But for every one of those, there's probably dozens of SMEs that get hit, and they don't make the headlines. And it's probably more of an existential threat to a small business than to a big enterprise. Big enterprise, they probably have the cash reserves, and they'll maybe get government support, and they make their headlines, and they'll get support from customers. If you're small and you got 10 customers or something, newspapers won't care, customers won't care. So it could be the end of your organization.
Which is pretty terrifying. And then so if I'm a small business owner, let's jump into this now, to be fair. So if I'm a small business owner, I've got, I don't know, 100 employees, I'm a car dealership, I don't know, local car dealership, for example. I've heard about ransomware on the news. You mentioned the technologies there. So what do I need to make sure I've got in place to at least give myself some protection from this kind of stuff?
Yeah. And it's such a good question, because I feel we often focus too much on enterprise, both in kind of the governmenty space, but it's especially people like us, software engineers, professionals, security professionals. Often we think, okay, let me go and land some really big customers, because that's how you make a successful business. But SMEs are, I think, quite badly undercatered for, and that's something that we're trying to fix. So we're absolutely happy to work, and we love working with smaller businesses. And the stats in the UK are quite bad. So I think it's 99% of businesses in the UK are SMBs. And yet the average spend is less than £100 on cybersecurity for the average business. Like the stats are not wonderful. So if you are Bob's car dealership and you're not that tech savvy, you're good at selling cars, you've got a few computers, things you need to think about are, one, I would say, at a high level conceptually, there are frameworks that you can implement, like policies, things to think about, checklists. And in the UK, the NCSC has the really wonderful cyber essentials. Mm-hmm. That's your first protocol. Go Google that. There's a website. It'll tell you step by step how you can implement it. And it's a self-certification. You go through the steps, and it helps you just kind of almost tick off the most basic things. Because the majority of breaches, so the way ransomware gets deployed, hackers will break into a company and then they'll deploy ransomware. So it's breach and then ransomware. So if you follow guidelines from Cyber Essentials, there's other programs, but Cyber Essentials is where you should start, especially if you're a small business. It will help you get those basic, we call basic cyber hygiene things in place. Yeah. And it's things like patching and password management and MFA and guidance around what a phishing email looks like and all those kind of basic things, because most of these companies aren't getting popped, or hacked via some super sophisticated mechanism. Even M&S, they were hacked by the third-party call center. Someone phoned up, "Hey, it's Bob. Can you reset my password? Oh, sorry, my MFA token's not working." So it's not super sophisticated. So one, yeah, policies, Cyber Essentials, and then Cyber Essentials Plus is the next level off that, and that's third-party accredited. And in terms of things you can specifically do, so I've got a few recommendations I give to all my clients or just people I chat to. One is asset management. So know what things you have, what computers do you have, what assets do you have. I recommend Run Zero. They're an amazing company. Mm-hmm. Second point is probably your people. Most breaches happen due to some degree of human, I don't want to say error because it's often not their fault. Like where people aren't, your average non-cyber person is not equipped to deal with complicated spear phishing emails and whatnot, but things going wrong with people. So some degree of awareness or training. What I recommend to all my clients is redflags.io. I don't work there, but I love their model.
Okay.
Their model is you have some software that runs on your computer, and anything that looks a bit dodgy or suspicious, get a little pop-up. Hey, that email looks a bit funny. Oh, I see you plugged in a USB drive. Are you sure you want to, put your files on there? You could get lost. Oh, this Wi-Fi spot looks a bit funny. It's basically like having me standing behind you, tapping you on the shoulder, saying, that looks dodgy.
Brilliant. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, two final points. So Thinkst canaries and their canary tokens. Okay. The average time that hackers spend on your network before you know about it is about 197 days. M&S hackers were happily wandering around for a good 2 months before and the only reason we found out they were there is they announced themselves. Hey, I've been wandering around your house for 2 months. Okay, now I've stolen your jewelry. Do you want it back? Like it's literally the only reason we know they were there because the CEO got a big fat ransom note. So how do you discover hackers on your network? One, ransomware. Two, maybe you read it in the news, front page news. Oh man, that's my company. Or three, maybe a friendly hacker says, did you know your data is for sale on the dark web? It's quite hard to catch hackers on your network. And I'm seldom caught on engagements when I'm being the ethical hacker. And I'm quite noisy because if I get caught, I don't go to jail. So the way to combat that, I believe, is via deception technology. And Thinkst and the canaries and tokens do a great job of that. Essentially, you can take files, make a Word document, call it mypasswords.docx, leave it lying around on your servers, on your laptop, on your desktop. And with the canaries, you can put a canary tracking token inside that document. So if anyone ever opens it, because it looks so enticing and delicious, ooh, passwords, I'll open that. You get an email saying, hey, someone just opened that file that's on your server. Someone's poking around where they shouldn't. And then they also have the canaries, which are like honeypots. So it's a physical device and it pretends to look like something else. But if you're an SME, definitely start with the canary tokens. They're free. And that's the only way I've ever been caught on an engagement. As I know someone's poking around where they shouldn't. And there's tons of other tooling, but of course I'll have to recommend our own Agger Labs as a final layer of defense. So run us on your endpoints, small little program that runs. You can run it alongside your EDR or AV if you have other stuff, but we do one thing and we do it right. We just catch and kill ransomware. No AI, no fluff, no machine learning, no signatures, just dead ransomware, as I say.
Love that. What a tagline. Just dead ransomware.
Yeah.
I can see that resonating with people that have been hit by the whole ransomware piece and getting quite a lot of emotion behind it.
It is. And that's the thing. So our whole drive is like, on one hand, okay, we started a business and we want to make money, but mostly just to, pay the bills and whatnot. What we really want to do is help people. Like ransomware is such a human thing. Like it just really, just ransomware hurts.
Yeah.
And especially, talking about SMEs and SMBs, it really hurts the small guys disproportionately. And that's why I do podcasts like this. So that's why I do our tooling. That's why I speak on stage, because I'm trying to raise awareness and help people. And look, this ransomware stuff sucks, and these hacker gangs suck, and they could target you. But look, here are things you can do to try and keep yourself safe.
Yeah, they're practical, relatively inexpensive steps that seem to be accessible. And it's not sort of raise your IT spend from under 100 to a million. It's nothing like that from
a few £100 a year, the difference that it will make.
Yeah.
Or just find me on LinkedIn and drop me a message and I'll help you out. I'll give you some recommendations. And there's 100 other people like me who just are really keen to help. And the NCSC, so they sent in a letter to the Sunday Times. You can write in a letter. I think was it Richard Horn maybe. I think he wrote in a letter because he wanted it kind of printed verbatim rather than an interview. And this letter kind of said, dear editor, the UK is really not great at cybersecurity, and we've put forward all these frameworks to help you, yet most businesses aren't doing them. So please come to the NCSC website. Please engage with us. We're really trying to help you. It's free advice, it's free tooling, it's free systems. So that they're really doing a big push to try and combat this, because it's both a nice thing for governments to do, but it's also quite essential. These foreign countries are attacking British soil and British companies. So it's definitely a national interest to help keep companies safe here in the UK.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned earlier around there's some changes coming into how law enforcement are acting on
Yeah,
initiatives they're driving there. What's going on in that space?
yeah. So to summarize it, I see three pillars, right? We covered a little bit of tooling, we covered kind of legislation and the law, and the third component is what can law enforcement do? And we've gone from a place where maybe 5 years ago they couldn't do too much to today where they are doing quite a lot. The analogy I use is like in London, if you're familiar with the moped gangs who steal cell phones, right? So they ride around their mopeds or the electric bikes, and they grab your phone when you're busy texting at the bus stop. 5 years ago or so, it was such a problem in London, and law enforcement didn't have the training or and they weren't allowed really to do anything about it. It was like, oh, why don't you just ram them off their bikes with your cars and everything? It's like, well, we're not allowed to, and we don't have the training.
Mm.
Now they do. Now they've had the training and they have the tooling, and it's quite satisfying to watch the videos on YouTube where they corral phone thieves and they catch them and they arrest them. And I would say that law enforcement has, on the ransomware side, gone down a similar path. So they didn't have the capability or the training some time ago, but now the law has changed so much, giving them greater capabilities, and they have the technical abilities to disrupt these gangs. And what does that look like? It's got a few facets. One is the investigative powers and abilities are a lot better, so that they have better capabilities to track Bitcoin payments, to profile these hacker gangs and everything, and understand them at quite a higher level. And that results in things like identifying the criminals behind these ransomware gangs and trying to extradite them or putting them on notice lists and things like that. What's interesting there, though, is that law enforcement will find these hackers, find their real personas, and they'll add them to whatever the NCA's most wanted list, or the FBI will put them on the FBI's most wanted list or something. Most of these hacker gangs are based in either Russia or ex-Soviet nations. That's a whole other discussion as to why they're there. But you can't, or it's pretty much impossible to extradite them, even if we catch them. As long as those gangs aren't hacking local businesses, their law enforcement kind of turns a blind eye, to be honest. Wow. And the thing is, those hackers, it's almost street cred or, kudos. Hey, look, I'm on the NCA's.
I was going to say, it must be a badge of honor, like a league table almost.
Yeah, so hey, we're Lockbit. We're the most wanted gang on the planet. Come be an affiliate with us because, the police are scared of us. So it's good that we're able to track them now. But then the problem was, okay, well, we're not actually disrupting it beyond, okay, trying to extradite them, or you're trying to issue fines or something like that. So the next step was some degree of what we call hack back. So the good guys hacking the bad guys. And we've seen some really interesting cases of that. So last February, so 2024 February, was called Operation Kronos. And that was a joint multi-nation, multi-law enforcement department operations, NCA and FBI and Interpol. And they targeted Lockbit. So Lockbit, one of the most prolific ransomware gangs, and they hacked into their systems, and they almost played the Uno reverse card. So law enforcement hacked into Lockbit, the ransomware gang, and stole their files and leaked them on the internet. Okay. One, to embarrass and disrupt them, but two, they also leaked all the decryption keys. So if you've been hit by Lockbit sometime before that, you could just go and grab the decryption key and get your files back. So it was quite successful. It was a good blow. Of course, Lockbit regrouped and they were back up not long after. We have Lockbit version 4 now, so they did bounce back to some degree, but it's definitely disrupting those gangs. And then, oddly enough, earlier this year, Lockbit got hacked again, we think by a rival group. So they're having a bit of a rough time, and all their affiliate chat logs were released. So those are
Oh, bless him.
fascinating to read.
I feel for him. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you can see the affiliates chatting with the victims. Hey, it's the price is 2 million. Oh, can I have a discount? You see the chats going back and forth. And then more recently, we have what law enforcement is calling Operation End Game, and that's worth a Google. Operation End Game. It's another joint operation by various law enforcement agencies, but they are trying to disrupt the infrastructure and the networks that kind of these ransomware gangs run on, as opposed to targeting individual ransomware gangs. But also, it's complete we call psyops, so psychological operations. It's messing with the hackers' heads because they've realized, okay, we put you on the NCA's most wanted list. Well, the hackers don't care. They think it's kind of cool. What they're doing now, if you go to the Operation Endgame website, they're creating almost mini Netflix style episodes of these hacker gangs, and they're what we call doxing. So doxing is when you go and find out personal information about people. So they're finding really intimate personal information about these hackers and then almost mocking them in these little cartoon style Netflix episodes. Like there's 6 episodes to a season. It's, hey, here's Dimitri. He sits in his parents' basement. He's overweight and women don't like him. And he chose to write ransomware. Don't be like Dimitri. He's an embarrassment. So we've almost, to some degree, learned where to hurt them as their egos and things like that. But the big picture there is the ability for law enforcement to hack back, and that's been absolutely fascinating. And also recent arrests. So the M&S and the others, those ransomware deployments and those hacks. Group known as Scattered Spider. That's kind of it's the name that CrowdStrike gave them. It's not their official name, but they kind of adopted the name and they like it. We should have chosen a different name, I think, like Teletubbies or something, to kind of embarrass them a bit because they like the name Captain Spider. But anyway, that group, they're slightly anomalous because they're one of the very few Western English-speaking ransomware groups. So their members are UK, US based, it seems. They're a very loose-knit group, and they belong to a larger group called the Com. That's a whole other story to unpack. But interestingly, law enforcement's arrested. I think a couple of years ago, they arrested a few of their members. Earlier this year, they arrested a few who they think were directly involved in M&S hacks. So I think law enforcement is definitely catching up in the capabilities. And the thing about being a criminal is it's difficult. People often ask me, hey, Glenn, you're a hacker. Why don't you just hack the bank and retire? There's two reasons. One is my moral compass wouldn't allow me to, which may be the more important answer. The other answer is the amount of the mental load and the mental work of having to separate your personal lives and your criminal lives is exhausting. You have to compartmentalize those things, absolutely. And you make one mistake, like these ransomware gangs did, the UK guys got arrested, you make one mistake, the one time you don't use a VPN, the one time you reuse an email address between breach forums and Facebook or something, they'll nab you. So it's been somewhat refreshing to see law enforcement ramping up the capabilities, but at the same time, ransomware gangs are ramping up their capabilities. So we're going head to head, but let's see how it pans out, hopefully in the good guys' favor.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems to me like just anecdotally and from the outside in, it's kind of the story at one time was very much ransomware's going to hit us. We can't really do anything about it. We don't know what it is yet. There's all these gangs to look what we're doing now with policy and technology and the good guys AI and all that good stuff coming through. So, it feels as though we're sort of shifting the other way. Just on the end game and the hack back piece, what's with embarrassing these guys or girls doing this stuff, does that then sort of result in I'm not going to do that anymore? Or does that motivate more?
Yeah, so I'd say we don't know yet, but the hope is that it's going to deter people from getting into that space because it kind of almost de-glamorizes it.
Yeah.
So if you're a young hacker and I've seen Scatter Spider in the news, they're so cool, I want to be like them. And then you see this other stuff, oh, actually, maybe they're not that cool. That's the one objective. The other objective is to dismantle the current gangs. So maybe that messaging, if suddenly, there's my face and I'm, in this, and people know me, it's been embarrassing. Maybe I should change career paths. The other thing I didn't mention earlier, I do a lot of things. I'm also an ambassador of the Hacking Games, and that's an initiative whose goal is to redirect the youth away from cybercriminality and into a career of ethical hacking or something legal. And it's almost similar messaging, but rather than trying to decriminalize, or maybe a degree decriminalize people, but to say, hey, kids at school, or if you're at university, did you know this is a really exciting career path, and you don't need to go down that road that you're maybe going down. It's like in London where you get those people who get you to sign petitions. Don't carry a knife, rather come play football or something. So
Mm.
it's trying to redirect the youth. But to answer your question, I think the goal of those psyops types operations is to deter people from getting involved in ransomware gangs, try and dismantle those existing ransomware gangs. And also, to be honest, I think it does genuinely look like law enforcement is kind of enjoying themselves because they've been on the back foot for so long, and now it's almost like they're leaning in and they're the one throwing the punch. And we'll see where it goes, but it's it seems to be something at least interesting. I'm not sure what the end result will be.
No, it's I think it's a sort of initiative or a move that's maybe outside the box, and let's give it a go.
Yeah,
But Glenn, thanks for jumping on. I'm just conscious of time, and we could talk for hours on this, and I'd certainly love to pick your brain more. So I'll be following up for sure. But no, thanks for joining, and excited to share this.
yeah. Thank you so much for your time, and yeah, thank you to all the listeners.
No dramas. Thanks. Bye bye.